Some people wake up and do exactly what they said they would do, but if you're honest, that is not you. You say wake up. Your hand reaches for snooze. You say focus. Your fingers find your phone before you decide. You promise yourself change. And then, nothing happens. Not because you are lazy, but because something inside you does not follow your command. And that is the real problem. Miyamoto Musashi understood this long before us. He did not try to feel motivated. He trained his mind to obey instantly. So here is the question you need to face. What if your problem is not discipline, but the fact that your mind was never trained to listen? Stay with me, because once you see this, you will not go back. But understanding a principle is easy. Living it is where most people break. There is a story rarely told about this path. Not about a legend, but about a man who stood at the edge of giving up. His name was Teeshi, a young ronin with no master, no direction, and no reason left to continue. He had already decided how his life would end. Not with meaning, but with silence. On a cold night, he walked into a cave, ready to disappear from the world. Instead, he found an old man sitting in stillness, weak in body, but unshaken in presence. It was Musashi. Teeshi expected judgment, or comfort, or at least an answer, but Musashi gave him none of that. He simply looked at him and said, "If you truly want to die, then die without regret. But if there is even a fragment of doubt, then your life does not belong to despair. It belongs to discipline." That moment changed everything, not because Teeshi suddenly found hope, but because he was forced to face the truth. He did not want death. He wanted escape. Musashi did not offer him purpose. He offered him a path, a hard one, a silent one, a path where nothing external would carry him forward. From that night on, Teeshi began to learn the first rule: accept everything just the way it is. No resistance, no story, no excuses. Because the moment you stop fighting reality, you finally gain the power to act within it. At first, Teeshi thought acceptance meant surrender. He believed it was the act of lowering his head and allowing life to crush him. But Musashi corrected him without raising his voice. Acceptance is not submission, it is clarity. One morning, as they traveled through a narrow mountain path, they were surrounded by men who wanted everything they had. Teeshi felt fear rise instantly. His body tightened. His mind searched for an escape that did not exist. This was the moment where most people break, not because they are weak, but because they resist what is already happening. Musashi did not move right away. He observed. No panic, no anger, no story about injustice. Only reality. Then he acted. Clean, direct, without hesitation. Afterward, Teeshi asked how he stayed so calm. Musashi answered in a way that would follow him for the rest of his life. If you argue with reality, you lose before you begin. If you accept it fully, you are free to respond without confusion. That day, Teeshi understood something deeper. Fear did not come from danger. It came from his refusal to face it as it was. From then on, every challenge became a mirror. Hunger, cold, exhaustion. Each one revealed how much he still resisted life instead of working with it. And slowly, something shifted. He stopped asking why this was happening to him. He started asking what needs to be done now. If this hits you in a real way, comment 1, not as a signal to me, but as a signal to yourself that you are ready to stop negotiating with reality and start facing it directly. Because this is where discipline truly begins. But acceptance was only the first gate. It made Teeshi stable, but it did not make him strong. The next lesson was far more dangerous because it did not come from pain. It came from comfort. After days of walking through cold forests and empty roads, Teeshi and Y arrived at a small village. For the first time in a long while, there was warmth. Food was placed in front of them. Rice, soup, the smell of something cooked with care. People smiled. They spoke gently. They offered rest. Teeshi felt his guard drop. This is good, he thought. This is what life should feel like. I watched him carefully, then said something that felt almost cruel. Do not seek pleasure for its own sake. Teeshi did not understand. There was nothing wrong with food, nothing wrong with rest, but that was not the point. That night, after eating more than he needed, after sitting longer than he should, Teeshi noticed something subtle. His mind became softer, slower, less willing to move. The fire that pushed him forward began to fade. I spoke again. Pleasure is not the enemy, dependence is. If you need comfort to act, you will stop the moment comfort disappears. From that day, Teeshi began to observe his impulses, the extra bite, the extra moment of rest, the quiet desire to choose ease over effort. He did not eliminate comfort, he stopped chasing it. And something changed again. His actions became cleaner, not driven by craving, not delayed by indulgence, just necessary movement at the right time for the right reason. Because when pleasure stops being the goal, discipline becomes natural. And for the first time, Teeshi felt a different kind of strength, not explosive but controlled, not loud but unshakable. But even that was not enough. Teeshi was becoming disciplined in action, but inside, something was still unsettled. It showed itself in quiet moments, when there was no danger, no hunger, no pressure, just space. That was when his mind began to speak again. Memories returned, faces from the past, people who had more than him, people who seemed ahead, lives that looked easier, better, more complete. A quiet voice asked, "Why not me?" At first, he tried to ignore it, but the more he suppressed it, the stronger it became, not loud, but persistent, a slow erosion of focus. One evening, as they rested near a river, Teeshi finally spoke. "I do not crave comfort anymore," he said, "but I still compare. I still feel something pulling me back." I did not answer immediately. He picked up a small stone and dropped it into the water. "Watch closely," he said. The surface broke, then settled. No trace remained. "That is your mind before you interfere." Then he added, "Envy is not about others. It is about your attachment to an image of who you think you should be." That struck deeper than anything before. Teeshi realized he was not chasing comfort anymore, but he was still chasing identity, a version of himself that needed to be validated by comparison. From that moment, the work changed. He stopped measuring his life against others. He stopped replaying the past. He stopped imagining a different path where everything turned out better. Not because those thoughts disappeared, but because he no longer gave them authority. Every time comparison arose, he returned to the present task, the step in front of him, the breath he was taking, the ground beneath his feet. And slowly the noise began to fade. In its place, something quieter emerged. Not pride, not ambition. Just clarity. Because when you remove comparison, you remove distraction, and when distraction disappears, discipline becomes absolute. Clarity gave Teeshi direction, but direction alone does not protect you from the next trap. Because once you stop chasing comfort and comparison, something more subtle appears, attachment to what you still have. It happened when they passed through a place Teeshi once called home. The path felt familiar. The air carried memories he thought he had already left behind. He saw faces that once mattered. A voice called his name. For a moment, everything inside him pulled backward. This was not desire. This was something deeper. Belonging. He stood still, caught between who he was becoming and who he used to be. The old life offered warmth, recognition, a place where he did not have to struggle to define himself. I watched him, then said quietly, "Do not let your heart be tied to a place." Teeshi felt resistance rise again. Was he supposed to abandon everything, every connection, every memory? He continued, "You are not leaving them. You are leaving the version of yourself that cannot move without them." That distinction changed everything. Teeshi realized that attachment was not about people or places. It was about dependence, the need to feel anchored in something external in order to feel whole. So, he made a decision. He bowed once, not in rejection, but in closure. Then he turned and walked forward. No anger, no regret, no looking back. That night, something inside him became lighter. If you have ever felt pulled back by something you already outgrew, comment too. Not for me, but to recognize the moment you choose to move forward without needing permission from your past. Because the path only opens when you stop holding on. Stay with this until the end, because the final shift will challenge even this level of strength, and very few people are ready for it. By now, Teeshi had learned to move without distraction, no longer pulled by comfort, no longer shaken by comparison, no longer tied to the past. But there was one final barrier that remained, and it was the one most people never confront directly. Fear. Not the fear of pain, not the fear of failure, but something deeper. The fear of ending. It revealed itself slowly, in moments where the path became uncertain, in nights where the body was weak, in silence, when there was nothing left to hold on to. Teeshi noticed it in the smallest hesitation, a slight delay before action, a quiet calculation of risk, a hidden desire to preserve himself. I saw it immediately. If you fear death, you will cling to life in the wrong way, he said. That sentence stayed with Teeshi. Because he realized something uncomfortable, every attachment he had already let go of had one root: survival. The need to protect, the need to secure, the need to continue. But that same need was also what created hesitation, compromise, and weakness. So, the training changed again. Teeshi stopped asking how to stay safe. He started asking how to act correctly, regardless of the outcome. This did not make him reckless. It made him precise. When fear no longer controlled his decisions, his actions became clean. No excess movement, no inner conflict, just execution. And in that state, something rare appeared. Freedom. Not because danger disappeared, but because fear no longer dictated his response. This is the point where most people turn back. Because living without fear is not comfortable, it is absolute. And very few are willing to face life without that final layer of protection. And that is where the path becomes real. Not when you feel motivated, not when things are easy, but when nothing is holding you anymore. No comfort, no validation, no attachment, no fear. Teeshi did not become invincible. He became clear. He no longer asked if life was fair. He no longer waited to feel ready. He no longer needed certainty to move. He simply acted, fully, directly, without hesitation. And in that state, something changed that cannot be seen from the outside. He was free. Not free because the world became easier, but free because nothing inside him needed the world to be different. That is the difference between living controlled and living disciplined. Most people spend their lives trying to fix the outside, the environment, the timing, the people around them. But the real work has always been internal. If you have followed this all the way here, you already know this is not just a story. This is a mirror. So, here is something simple. Comment 3 if you are ready to stop waiting and start building that level of control in your own life. And if this way of thinking speaks to you, subscribe and stay close. Because this is not motivation, this is training. And the deeper you go, the more uncomfortable it becomes. But that is exactly where the transformation happens.